Picking up from our last discussion on the bedrock of ethics and moral responsibility, let's really dig into how this principle shapes our understanding of duty, virtue, and rights. We're starting with a seemingly simple idea, moral responsibility. But what does it actually mean? The text argues it's rooted in something called moral consciousness. Think of it like an internal referee, constantly judging our actions and those of others. Now, this isn't some mystical faculty, it's universal. Everyone has it, even if it's murky or mistaken. Because it's universal, the responsibility it entails is also universal. No one gets a free pass. Okay, so if we all have this moral consciousness, it implies there's a moral law governing us. But what kind of law? Not just any arbitrary rulebook. The text suggests the foundation lies in the idea of finality. What does that mean? Essentially, it's about purpose. Our actions are directed towards some end, some goal. Why is this important? Two big reasons. First, it makes ethics practical. It doesn't rely on fleeting passions or cold calculations of self-interest. You don't need to be swayed by your mood swings to know what's right. Second, it prevents us from chasing impossible or absurd goals. If morality is about achieving our inherent purpose, we're not asking people to do the logically impossible. And here's the kicker compared to Kant. Happiness isn't sacrificed at the altar of duty. In fact, finding and fulfilling our purpose through moral action leads to happiness. It's not a zero-sum game between duty and well-being. They can be harmonious. Now, let's talk about duty and the good. Duty, in this framework, is straightforward. It's the obligation to respect that moral law we just discussed and to actively work towards our ultimate purpose. But what exactly is the good? It's simply defined as that end for which we were made. Notice the logical order here. The good comes first. We have duties because the law guiding us is good. This flips the script on Kant. For Kant, duty was the starting point, the absolute commandment whose reason we couldn't question. Here, the goodness of the law is the justification for duty. It's not blind obedience, it's rational alignment with our inherent purpose. Makes sense, right? You wouldn't follow a rule unless you believed it led somewhere positive. So if duty is respecting the law, what is virtue? It's not just doing one good deed. Virtue is the constant practice of duty. Think of Aristotle's concept of habit. It's about building a character, a disposition. It's the temperament of your will. But here's a crucial point. Does virtue mean slavishly following every single letter of the moral code? Absolutely not. That would be ridiculous and counterproductive. Imagine someone who, due to a misunderstanding, unknowingly violates a minor rule while acting with sincere good intentions. Are they suddenly vicious? Of course not. So the text argues, virtue requires obedience to the spirit of the law, not just the letter. How do you achieve this? First, you must sincerely determine what your true end is, using only reason, setting aside personal feelings or biases. Once you've done that, virtue becomes simply the consistent effort to advance that end. That, fundamentally, is goodwill, the willingness to use reason to find your purpose and then stick to it. Now, a potential snag. Kant famously argued we must love virtue itself. Does this view agree? Not quite. Can we condemn someone for feeling good about doing good? The text says no, it's irrational. Moral sentiment, things like feeling content with a virtuous act, remorse when we fail, sympathy for others' struggles, or even antipathy towards vice, these aren't obstacles to morality. They are aids. They help us connect with the moral life. We can't command feelings, nor can we expect morality to be purely intellectual. If you feel genuine remorse for a mistake, that's good. If you feel joy in helping someone, that's also good. Its absence might make your virtue look more austere, perhaps more beautiful in a stoic way, but its presence isn't a flaw. It's part of the package. All right, shifting gears to rights. What are they? The text defines them as a moral authority bestowed upon humans in specific situations. Notice the key word, moral. This means the existence of a right doesn't depend on whether we have the power or resources to enforce it. Think about this. A child, completely alone in a forest, physically weak with no weapons, does that child lose their right to be respected, to have their life valued? No, that right exists inherently, based on their personhood, regardless of their ability to defend it. It's an intrinsic claim, not just a legal one. So, how do we usually think rights are established? Enter Thomas Hobbes. His famous theory starts with the state of nature, a brutal, self-interested chaos where might makes right. People give up some natural rights to form a society and guarantee their own preservation. Sounds plausible, but the text argues this foundation is shaky. Why? Because if rights only rest on a simple agreement, they're fragile. They could evaporate the moment someone feels like breaking the deal. Hobbes' solution? An absolute monarch to enforce the contract. Okay, but now you've traded the whims of the crowd for the whims of one man. Is that really more stable? The text suggests not. Both are inadequate guardians. Perhaps, counterintuitively, leaving the contract in the hands of the collective that formed it might be more robust. Beyond the instability issue, the text raises another fundamental challenge to Hobbes. Even if we accept a state of nature, does it truly mean a person's rights are limited only by their physical strength? Think about it. Doesn't the very existence of a moral law, even in a hypothetical state of nature, impose limits? The law commands us to preserve life, not to steal, etc. These commands restrict what we can do, even if we have the power to do otherwise. So the argument is, we start with more power than we have rights. The moral law itself begins carving out the boundaries of legitimate action before any formal social contract is even signed. If might isn't the base, and the state of nature isn't fully defined by power, what is? The text proposes a clear link between duty and rights. Let's look at Nicolas de Condorcet. Cousin is likely referring to him here, though the text says cousin. He suggested a right is simply a demand for someone else to perform their duty. So my right to life comes from your duty not to kill me. Seems logical, but the text finds a fatal flaw. Why should I have the right to demand you fulfill your duty? If you don't, you face the consequences yourself. Demanding others be charitable based on this logic. That sounds suspiciously like socialism. It undermines individual freedom. So, what's the alternative? The text offers a powerful insight. Our rights are grounded in our own duties. If I have the duty to preserve my life, then I have the right to do whatever is necessary to fulfill that duty, including defending myself against threats. Put simply, man has only one right, that of doing everything which is necessary in order to accomplish his duty. Your rights aren't about controlling others, they're about enabling yourself to live up to your responsibilities. Okay, let's organize our thoughts. Practical ethics deals with the nitty-gritty. What should we do in real life? The text divides this into four main areas. First, individual morality. What duties do we owe ourselves, assuming we're isolated? Second, domestic morality, the family unit. Third, civic morality, our obligations within our nation or community. And fourth, social morality, our broader duties to all of humanity. Think of it as moving from the self inward to the family, then outward to the nation, and finally to the global stage. We'll tackle these one by one. First up, individual morality. What duties do we owe ourselves? Applying our core principle, treat your personality as an end, never a means. We start with the body. The primary duty is preservation. Suicide is deemed immoral here for several reasons. One, even in isolation, we have duties to ourselves, developing our mind, sensibility, activity. Killing yourself stops that. 2. Treating the body as a disposable instrument for pleasure, to be discarded when inconvenient, is wrong. The body serves a higher purpose. 3. It violates social morality too, preventing us from helping others. Just as killing yourself outright is wrong, slowly destroying your health through self-harm is equally so. The body isn't meant to be tortured. Therefore, we must also actively maintain and improve our physical well-being. Hygiene, moral. Temperance, also moral as it avoids abusing pleasures that harm the body. Basically, take care of your vessel. Moving from the body to the soul, intelligence, sensibility, and activity. For intelligence, the first duty is honesty. Lying, whether to yourself or others, diverts it from truth. But it's not just about avoiding lies. We have a duty to develop our intelligence as much as possible. Studying, thinking, exploring, this is good. There's no conflict between morality and progress. Using your mind is moral. For sensibility, our passions and emotions, the duty is development, but harmoniously. Which sentiment takes priority? Human dignity. A legitimate pride in being a moral person. This isn't arrogance or vanity. True dignity understands its own weakness, hence includes modesty. Finally, activity. The duty is to exercise it. Work. All forms of work are noble. Laziness is portrayed as corrosive, weakening the will and making one susceptible to external influence. But we also need balance. Avoid both laxity, losing clarity of purpose, and obstinacy, refusing to adapt when needed. Firmness, not weakness or stubbornness, is the goal. Now, let's zoom out to domestic ethics, the family. Some philosophers, like Plato and the communists mentioned, tried to abolish the family, seeing it as unnatural. But the text argues forcefully for its existence. Why? Two main reasons. First, children. The family is uniquely positioned to provide the earliest education and instruction. That instinctive parental love, especially in the beginning, is irreplaceable. A child cut off from this bond is isolated. Second, the family teaches disinterest. Within the family, individuals learn to consider others' interests, make sacrifices, and dedicate themselves to the common good of the household. This is vital training for society, which demands similar sacrifices. Think of society like a large organism. Families are its essential subordinate centers. Break them down, and the whole structure weakens. What holds the family together? Marriage. Defined here as a mutual commitment between a man and woman to share life's ups and downs. The key is reciprocity, giving oneself to the other. Without this mutuality, it's seen as enslavement. So parents owe each other fidelity. Beyond that, traditional roles might emerge. Perhaps the man protects, the woman nurtures based on aptitudes, but crucially, they remain equal. Now parents' duties to children provide materially, educate morally, but how? Not through absolute authoritarianism, which violates the child's developing rights, nor through Rousseau's liberal neglect, which leaves the child unprepared for the world. The aim is to prepare the child for freedom, teaching habits that foster personality. Authority should guide towards eventual autonomy. And importantly, this duty applies equally to all children, no birthright favoritism. What about children's duties? Primarily obedience, but only until they become adults. Why? Because children lack the full capacity to navigate the complexities of morality independently. Parents guide them. Plus, children often ignore their own best interests. Once grown, however, the obligation to obey ends. But love and respect for parents should continue, recognizing their past services. And among siblings, the ideal is fraternal love, the purest form of friendship, built on absolute confidence and equality, stemming from their shared origin. Think of it as the blueprint for healthy social bonds. Moving from the family to the larger community, civic ethics. What duties do we owe fellow citizens? Some thinkers like Hobbes, Bossuet, and Rousseau viewed society as artificial, something imposed on our natural state of solitude or savagery. But the text pushes back hard. Are we really naturally solitary? Or are altruistic sentiments just as natural as selfish ones? We crave company, solitude is often disagreeable. As Plato put it, we are political animals. Society isn't artificial, it's fundamental. Isolation is the abstraction. Think about the individual body itself. It's a complex system of interacting parts. Society is simply a larger, more complex version of this natural tendency towards association. So if society is natural, why do we organize it? The answer is the division of labor. Nobody can do everything alone. Specializing, working on specific tasks, and exchanging goods makes everyone better off. This interdependence is the foundation. To manage this interdependence and care for the common good, we establish a government. And to prevent this government from becoming tyrannical, we implement the division of powers. Legislative power makes the laws, executive power enforces them, and judicial power punishes violations. Checks and balances, essentially. What's the justification for punishment? Common ideas are expiation washing away sin, reform changing the person, or deterrence scaring others. The text dismisses these. How can punishment truly expiate a deed? We can't read minds or intentions perfectly. Can punishment reliably reform? Often it just makes people worse. Does fear truly teach morality? No, the real basis, the text argues, is the right to self-defense. Just as an individual has the right to live and protect themselves, so too does society. This right allows society to punish wrongdoing immediately, or to threaten punishment to prevent it. It's about protecting the collective existence. Now, let's look at two competing theories about government's role, similar to debates in education. First, socialism, as understood here, closer to Rousseau's state than modern socialism. It claims individuals surrender their rights to the state, becoming mere instruments for society's ends. The state guides us, even against our will. This leads to absolutism and crucially violates individual personality. The text rejects this. Second, liberalism or individualism. This sees society as secondary, the individual as primary. Government's only job is to protect individuals from each other, safeguarding individual freedom. The text counters that this ignores society's own unique ends and interests. Each nation, like each person, has its own purpose. So neither pure socialism nor pure liberalism works. The text proposes a synthesis. Government has a dual role, protects citizens from each other, and guides society towards its proper end. Crucially, this government is born of the people and thus subject to their control. But there are strict limits. It cannot undermine citizen personality, and most importantly, it cannot interfere with thought. Freedom of thought must be absolute. Ideas suppressed will inevitably resurface. While legislation can regulate how ideas are spread, it cannot dictate what ideas are permissible. Discussion and debate, free from interference, are how truth emerges. If government has these roles, what duties do citizens owe? Four key ones. 1. Obedience to the law. In a democracy, laws reflect the collective will. Can minorities disobey? Morally, yes, if the law is unjust. Practically, in functioning democracies, dissent should be expressed through debate, not violence. 2. Taxes. Public services require funding, and citizens benefiting should contribute. Ideally through agreed-upon taxes. 3. Military service, the ultimate tax, the tax of blood. Necessary for defense, both internal and external. Universal obligation, though exemptions might be granted for those serving critical non-military roles like elder care or advancing high culture. 4. Voting, not just a right but a duty. Concern for the common good necessitates participation. Abstaining undermines the collective. Let's broaden our view again to general duties of social life. People often distinguish between negative duties don't kill and positive duties do good. Negative duties seem stricter, absolute. Positive duties seem broader, allowing more flexibility. But the text argues this distinction is misleading. All duties ultimately stem from the same absolute moral law. There is no hierarchy of obligation. Justice isn't inherently more binding than charity. Popular sayings suggesting otherwise are wrong. The difference we perceive is mainly because positive duties often lack civil sanctions. If you don't help, the state doesn't punish you, unlike breaking a negative duty like a law. But morally, both types of duties are equally obligatory. If all duties are equally obligatory, where does merit come in? The text offers a fascinating perspective. Merit isn't found in doing what's obligatory, but in overcoming difficulty. Consider this: paying a tax that the law technically allows you to avoid versus giving money to a poor person. Assume the latter is easier for you. Which act is more obligatory and more meritorious? The text argues it's the difficult one, paying the tax rationally, resisting the urge to cheat the system. Why? Because justice often requires pure reason, devoid of emotional prompts, making it harder to perform consistently than acts of charity, which sentiment might easily support. This also explains why we romanticize antiquity. When general morality was lower, even basic acts of kindness or fairness required significant effort and thus seemed more heroic. Let's dive into the first category, justice. What is it? Simply respecting the personality of others, treating them as ends, never merely as means. Applied to the body, this means don't kill. Absolute right, mostly. But exceptions exist, specifically the right of self-defense. If your life is threatened, you have the right to defend it, even to the point of killing the aggressor. This applies to individuals and to society itself. If a criminal threatens society, society has the right to defend itself. This forms the basis for punishment, including the death penalty. However, the text questions the death penalty's effectiveness. Is severity or certainty more deterrent? Its potential to desensitize us to violence and thus favors abolition, though cautiously. War, justified defensively. Offensive wars? The soldiers' hands are clean. The blame lies with the leaders. Dueling? Sometimes justified by self-defense if the law fails, but it's deeply flawed, equating insult with death, private judgment replacing justice. It's a relic of outdated notions. Justice extends beyond the body to the soul. Respecting sensibility means being courteous, avoiding unnecessary distress. Does this conflict with honesty? Not necessarily. Sometimes brutally honest truth-telling harms unnecessarily. The text argues we should choose kindness unless the truth is essential and beneficial. Respecting intelligence means tolerance, letting people think freely, respecting all sincere opinions, regardless of how strange they seem. Don't judge someone's character by their beliefs. Why? Morality demands it, and science benefits from it. Free inquiry and debate allow truth to emerge. Respecting activity means respecting freedom. Slavery is fundamentally immoral because it denies freedom. Even consensual slavery is rejected. And finally, respecting one's word means keeping promises. Why? Honesty forbids breaking them, and breaking a promise harms the other person who relied on it. Commitments must be freely given, of course. Beyond the negative duties of justice, we have the positive duties of charity. The moral law demands more than just non-harm. It calls us to actively help others realize their potential. Think of it as the flip side of the coin. While justice says, don't do to others what you wouldn't want done to you, charity says, do unto others as you would have done to you. So, what does this entail? Towards the body, it means caring for health. towards the soul. For sensibility, it means benevolence, active kindness, going beyond mere politeness. For intelligence, it means sharing knowledge, teaching, developing others' minds. For activity, it means sharing resources, especially through almsgiving, when others lack the means to provide for themselves. Now, what happens when justice and charity clash? The text is clear: justice always takes precedence. Our first duty is to avoid harming others, only then do we turn to helping them. Furthermore, any help we offer must never be imposed. Why? Because helping someone against their will violates their free activity and personality, the very thing we aim to help them develop. As the old saying goes, invitam qui servenitem facit occidens, saving someone against their will is like murdering them. So, theoretically, a father shouldn't risk his life to save a stranger if it means abandoning his family. But practically, the text adds a nuance: no individual should claim to be indispensable. Such arrogance hurts others. While sacrificing oneself for charity is admirable, it shouldn't be framed as a universal duty overriding all other obligations. To wrap up, let's quickly summarize the ethical approach presented. It contrasts with two main historical traditions. Empiricism, like Mill's utilitarianism, tries to derive morality from observing what makes people happy. But the text argues this can only yield temporary, context-specific rules, never reaching the universal truth of morality. On the other hand, Kant's a priori approach starts with abstract concepts of pure reason, creating a morality detached from human experience. The approach outlined here is different. It starts with a concrete fact of experience, moral responsibility. From there, it deduces a universal law grounded in finality, but always keeps psychology and human nature firmly in view. It uses reason but is anchored in reality. The result? An ethics that's neither detached fantasy nor just descriptive psychology, but something grounded, rigorous, and relevant to actual human life. That brings our exploration of duty, virtue, and rights to a close for now.